Jack Delosa, thanks for dropping by.
Thanks for having me, mate. Good to be here.
Of course. Man, so tell me, what made you get started in entrepreneurship?
It's a really interesting question. I guess my journey into entrepreneurship really started when I was much, much younger. When I was 4 years of age, my parents started to run a not-for-profit organization called Breaking the Cycle, and they'd take long-term unemployed youth off the streets, out of jail, put them through a 3-month training program on personal development skills and employability skills, and then they'd facilitate them into employment. And even though they would deliberately choose those from the most challenged backgrounds, they were the most successful job placement agency for long-term unemployed youth in the country. And so that's the classroom that I grew up in, quite literally. Mum was the head trainer, dad was the managing director. And so I would literally be wagging primary school and sitting in mum's classroom most days.
Wow.
And so because they were a not-for-profit organization, when I was about 11, the organization collapsed. The government restructured the way they issued capital out to not-for-profits. Breaking the Cycle was unsuccessful to, continue the funding under the new structure. And so when Breaking the Cycle collapsed, I think that's where I get my commercial side from, my financial side from. I've always wanted to, from a very young age, build businesses that make a positive impact in the world, but I've wanted them to be hugely financially successful and scalable and sustainable so that we can get our message out there, so that we can attract the best talent in the world, and so that we can do bigger and better things. And so I think if you look at both components of Breaking the Cycle, because when Breaking the Cycle was alive, it taught me that the traditional system doesn't work for everybody. And that's only increasingly true today, and it will only become increasingly true going forward. And so for me, I want to build businesses and organizations that improve people's lives.
Love it.
And I want them to be hugely financially successful along the way.
Yeah. When it comes to businesses, like you've coached over, 400,000 entrepreneurs almost, right? So what do you think is the one ingredient that makes most entrepreneurs fail? Because there's quite a few. What do you think is like, is it a mindset thing in them? Is it a paradigm? Like, what do you think it is for yourself?
Business owners think they've got a lead gen problem or a market problem or a product problem, and they don't. They have a discipline problem, because whether you're in the wrong market or you don't have product to market fit or you're not generating enough leads, there's answers to all of those challenges that are within reach for any entrepreneur. It's just that we spend so much time chasing shiny things, chasing novel things, and we don't focus on doing the basics. Yeah. The things that grow businesses are not novel, interesting, or exciting. The things that grow businesses are the fundamentals. And so what I see inhibits the growth of a lot of business owners is they don't have the discipline to ask themselves, what's the number one constraint in this business right now that, if unlocked, would make the biggest difference, and then stick with that to a very focused extent until it's resolved, until the initiative or the project that we're developing to resolve that constraint is complete, and then move on to the next one. What business owners tend to want to do is we tend to want to do everything. We tend to want everything done yesterday. And that comes from a healthy place because we're optimistic and we're in a hurry. But ironically, when we try to do everything, we end up doing nothing well, and it ultimately slows us down. So for a lot of business owners, it's the fact that they're in a hurry is the very thing that's slowing them down. If we could pause, reflect, identify what is the core constraint, deploy 1 or 2 initiatives against that, complete that, and then move on to the next thing, then you'd see businesses grow a lot faster.
So when it comes to entrepreneurs that wear all the hats, right? What's the first step of getting them to not wear all the hats? Because for me at the moment, brother, I wear every fucking hat at the moment. And it's stressful, man. It leads to burnout as well. Burnout's a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. And so here's the thing. When we talk about going from technician to manager to leader to entrepreneur and kind of elevating up to be less of a business operator and more of a business owner, what gets you there is building out your team, building out the support that you have around you. However, that's usually not the first constraint. Usually the first constraint is revenue, profitability, and cash flow, meaning, Jack, I'd love to have a team. I'd love to be able to employ an assistant or an EA and an admin assistant and a bookkeeper and start to build out my sales team and start to build out my marketing team, but I don't have the cash flow to do so. And so it depends on the specific business, but the most common pattern is we need to increase revenue and profitability, bring more cash into the business, and then use a proportion of that surplus cash to start building out your team around you that enables you to elevate. Usually the first constraint is around marketing and sales, revenue generation, and unlocking that enables you to unlock the second constraint, which is I'm doing everything myself. I need some support.
And what do you think's been the hardest constraint for you in business when it comes to like what you've got now? Is it culture? Is it leadership? Is it people? Is it team? Sales, marketing? What's been like the biggest challenge for you?
You mean as in like right now over the
Right now,
last
yeah.
6 months?
Right now.
The biggest challenge for us right now is how do we go from an 8-figure business to a 9-figure business?
Mm,
And so the core constraint is scaling delivery,
mm,
is up leveling myself and the team around me. And when we've done that, entering into new and larger markets that enable the growth of the business.
mm. Because scaling's tough, man. Do you think with yourself scaling is like how do you manage the team as you scale, like with leadership quantities? Like how do you actually manage that for yourself? Because when you scale normally, you have this personal connection with a lot of people that you work with. So like how do you get them on the same vision that you want to go from like 8 to 9 figures? Because the hardest part for me is creating that vision consistently with people in the culture of an organization.
There's a few things to building out team. The first one is recognizing that you need to start doing it. And so the first thing you want to do is start hiring your weaknesses,
Mm,
but eventually you will also
nice.
hire your strengths.
Mm,
And so in terms of like who should you be recruiting and in what sequence, I encourage people to start with like admin and operational type roles.
mm,
From there, and by the way, I include the bookkeeping and the accounting
yeah.
and all of that within that sphere. From there, you want to backfill yourself in product or service development and delivery. So the vast majority of business owners spend the majority of their time delivering their product or service.
Mm,
If that is true for you, then you don't have a business, you have a job.
yeah.
And so the second thing we need to get off your plate is product or service delivery. Once you've delegated or outsourced that, we then build team in marketing. We then finally build a sales team, and then we start to build a leadership team across all of those
Mm,
functions. And so the first thing is understand and making it a priority to build out your team in the correct sequence that's going to
mm,
give you the most firepower as you grow.
mm,
Once you've started to develop the team, you then need an operating rhythm because a lot of businesses go from 5 people to 50 people, but they continue to manage the team the same way at 50 people as they
mm,
did at 5. And that doesn't work because at 5 people, you turn to Jane, you say, hey, Jane, we're going to do this. You turn to John, you say, hey, John, we're going to do this. And that's like organizational
mm,
change. When you've got 50 people, 500 people, the game changes, right?
yeah.
And so you need an operating rhythm, which
Mm,
is how often are you having one-on-ones with your team? How often is your leadership team having one-on-ones with their team? How often are you having team meetings? How often are you having leadership team meetings? How often are you doing founders addresses to address the entire teams? And so once you lock into an operating rhythm, it enables you to monitor and track performance and adjust your forward-looking strategy accordingly.
mm. And when you have your team, how do you? Because a lot of businesses they suffer when it comes to culture. Like, how do you keep instilling vision into like your business, into businesses you work with, and obviously you coach? Because a lot of people they struggle to keep the vision aligned with everyone that works for the company. Like, any tips on that?
Yeah, so there's a few things I do around that. The first is we are very clear on our vision, mission, and our
Mm,
values. And so, vision for me is what is our purpose-driven reason for why we exist. Meaning, it's not focused on us; it's focused on the impact that we want to make. Mission being what do we do every day to fight towards that vision, and then values being who do we want to be along the way. What are the agreements in terms of how we'll communicate and operate
mm,
together and as individuals along the way. And so, having a vision, mission, and values is not enough. It is about to what extent do you as the leader embody them?
mm,
To what extent do you recruit according to them? So other people that already have the seed of that dynamic inside of them. And then to what extent do you remind people of it and cultivate a purpose around your
mm,
vision, mission, and values? So that's the first thing is being really clear on why you exist, what you're here to do, and recruiting people that care about that.
yeah.
The second thing is, ironically, and I think this is something a lot of business owners shy away from, A players are motivated by accountability and performance orientated cultures. And so at the beginning of each new month, we will do a team meeting that I will host and I will outline all of our, across every function of the business, marketing, sales, delivery, ops, finance, and people, both of our agencies, how every function performed, what targets did we hit, what targets did we miss, and why. Where we overachieved, why did we overachieve? Where we underachieved, why did we underachieve? And so I'll go through absolutely everything. And then I'll outline for the coming month, and then I'll ultimately go for the next 3 months. But for the coming month, what are our key targets across every function for the coming month? That excites and motivates A players, because A players want to be a part of an organization that's not just going somewhere, vision, but is winning and knows that they're winning. And when they're losing, they're not shying away from it. They're addressing it, trying to work it out and trying to correct it. And so the first thing is vision, mission, values. The second thing is have a performance-oriented culture that enables A players to thrive and weeds out B and C players. And then the third thing that's critical for culture is keeping everybody connected to the customer. And what I mean by that is this weird thing happens in business where as a business grows and you go, let's say, beyond 10 people, what I see in businesses and teams is the teams start to believe that the business exists for them.
Yeah.
And a business does not exist for its employees. A business exists for its customers. And so if I've done a good job in recruiting and I've recruited people that don't just care about our vision, mission, values, but have a deep care and consideration and genuinely want to serve and deliver and help the customer to win, then keeping everybody connected to that is incredibly motivating. And so every 2 months I hold what I call a founder's address. It's not a management meeting. It's not a performance meeting. Everybody in the team is there, goes for a couple of hours, and I'll talk about one of the 3 things I've just spoken about. We'll either do a recap of vision, mission, values, or we'll talk about performance for the last quarter and what's coming up for the next quarter. Or thirdly, I'll bring in some of our members, some of our clients, and I'll interview them in front of the team. And that will show the team firsthand the kind of impact that their work is creating for the people that we're here to serve. The general principle is this: the closer somebody is to the mechanics of a business, the more disconnected they will become from the why. And what I mean by that is this: even people like you and I who are deeply connected to the why in our own businesses, if you're just working 6-7 days a week and all you're dealing with is problems and mechanics and operations, if you don't consciously remind yourself or plug yourself back into your own why and the why of the business, you kind of lose connection with it. The same is true for your team, only it happens faster and to a much greater degree. And so I think we need to remind ourselves as business owners that our team are in the weeds and in the functions every single day. They're solving problems, they're working hard, and it can be tiring and fatiguing. And so part of my job is to keep them connected to customer and keep them connected to the essence that brought them here in the first place.
That's incredible. Also, Jack, when you say you hire A-grade players, then what makes an A-grade player? Because I can imagine you've hired and fired a lot of people in your lifetime in business. What are the attributes, the traits that make an A-grade player?
There's 2 core things. What makes an A player is somebody that has demonstrated exceptional ability at creating results. And so particularly in a small to medium-sized business environment, you have to have people that can connect to strategy and understand the high level as to where we're going. But at the same time, you can't just have executives that came out of corporate or came from a $500 million company and they're used to sitting in an ivory tower, because they won't have the technician aspect of themselves developed. And they might not even want to get their hands dirty. And that's not going to cut it in a small to medium-sized business. Let's say anything under $50 million in revenue. So A players need to have a history of demonstrable exceptional ability and results. And secondly, they need to understand everything from high level, big picture, right down to detail and execution. And they need to be effectual at both ends of the spectrum.
Interesting. I want to make sure we don't overlook this one. So we mentioned burnout before. Now with burnout, with people like yourself, you're scaling from 8 to 9 figures. I mean, that's crazy. It's incredible. Well done. But also, how do you actually manage burnout in yourself? But also, how do you recognize burnout with everyday people that are working for you? Because there's obviously, when you have staff, I've experienced it. I see them, they're burning out. They're not the same. Like, how do you either, one, get the burnout back from them, and then actually get them back engaged? And two, how do you overlook it and actually help with yourself?
You overcome burnout by
Mm.
doing deliberate and active rest. And what I mean by that is you can stop and pause, but you may not be doing the things that give you rejuvenation.
Yeah.
And so if you stop and pause and you're eating McDonald's and you're eating junk food and you're drinking alcohol and you're partying, for me, that only makes it worse.
Mm.
And so when it comes to maintaining a high level of energy and maintaining a high level of output, it's always about coming back to the basics. It's about prioritizing sleep. It's about eating clean foods. It's about training, whether you do weight training or exercise or cardio, whatever it might be for any particular individual. Minimize or cut out alcohol, minimize or cut out processed foods, minimize or cut out sugar. If you just do those things, right? There's a lot of people say, I've got anxiety, but they drink alcohol 3 times a week.
Yeah.
If I drank alcohol twice a week, I would have anxiety, right? And so I think that the things that are easy to do are easy not to do, meaning we all know that we should prioritize sleep. We all know that we should minimize alcohol, and they're relatively easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. And so I think that when it comes to managing one's energy and not getting to a point where you've burnt out, it's about doing the basics well and consistently.
Yeah. And I guess as a CEO and a founder, like, how do you manage your day throughout not getting burnt out for yourself? You're not focusing on consistent tasks that are mundane. Like, how do you actually manage that, like, strength and energy through yourself every day?
2 ways. Firstly is I know how I work best. And so, for example, my hours are a little bit different to most. So I'll usually wake up at about 5 a.m. And I know that for me, during the hours from, let's say, 5 a.m. to midday, my brain power and intellectual capability is significantly greater than in the second half of the day. And so I don't get up and do a 3-hour morning routine. I don't get up and go to the gym. I get up, I have a cup of coffee. I might play with Panda and Ariella, my 19-month-old daughter, and my wife. I might do that for half an hour, or they might sleep in which case I just get straight to work. And so generally I'm kind of working from, let's say, anywhere from 5:30 to 6 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m. So I actually stop working quite early. And then at that point, I go to the gym every day, come home, time with the girls, dinner, relax, bed. And so I know that for me, my greatest superpower with regards to business and being effectual in pushing projects forward is in the morning. And so I optimize everything for that. I don't care that traditional hours are 9 to 5:30. I don't care that my team are in there from 9 to 5:30 and that I might be in there a few hours earlier and I'm leaving half an hour earlier than that. I don't care about any of that. I know that in order to be the most effectual, what I need to do. And so I do that religiously. So that's the first thing, is know yourself and know what works for you. Second thing, to come back to your question, what do? I do all of the things that we spoke about in the previous question. I prioritize sleep. Whenever I drink alcohol very infrequently. Like, even if I'm going through a busy period, which I have for the last year, I drink hardly at all.
Yeah, nice.
Right. I eat incredibly well. I eat whole foods, natural foods. I hardly eat any processed foods. I hardly ever eat sugar. And so, I meditate when I need to. I train every day. And so I don't say any of that. I'm not impressed with myself for any of that. It's literally just what I have to do in order to maintain the level of output that I like to maintain. Right. And so I don't do that out of any kind of sense of nobility or, I'm not necessarily impressed by that. It's just the lifestyle that I've had to develop in order to do the things and live the life that I want to live.
A lot of my listeners, Jack, they're in the cave. When you build a business, you're in the cave, isolated, lonely, just trying to build something,
Yeah.
What's like any tips that you would give these people to actually help them just drive their business? Because it is quite hard. It's lonely, like long days. You're not getting rewarded for it, financially. I mean, what's the advice you could give to these type of people? Because there's a lot of listeners that would obviously go through that at the moment.
The first thing is we need to normalize the difficulty of it. Business is incredibly difficult. Business is slow. Business is often tedious. Business is harder than we think it's going to be. Everything takes 3 times as long and costs 3 times as much, and you end up earning a third of what you thought you were going to.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing that I see, particularly with the Entourage, because we see tens of thousands of businesses every single year, is when operating in isolation, business owners think that they're the only ones coming up against the challenges that they're coming up against. And the reason why that's destructive is the next thought is, what's wrong with me? Because I look at Instagram and everyone's succeeding and crushing it, aren't they? Everyone's smiling and traveling and driving Lamborghinis or whatever it might be. I'm sitting here doing really ordinary day-to-day work in my lounge room in my pajamas. What's wrong with me? Oh. And the answer is there's nothing wrong with you. That is the reality of business. And so the best thing we can do is understand that business is difficult. It's incredibly challenging. And so if it's difficult for you and you're finding it challenging right now, that's par for the course. What we see at the Entourage is whether we're doing a large event or, like a public event, or we bring our members together 4 times a year, it might be sort of 300, 7 and 8 figure business owners in a room. When people start that process with us, the number one thing that they point to as being like therapeutic and cathartic is they're like, I came into a room and everybody had the same challenges I was going through. I thought I was the only one. Now I realize I'm not. And so it enables them to kind of drop the whole story of what's wrong with me and just get on with doing the work.
And you touched base on social media. So, I mean, what have you seen change? Because you're so right. You go to Instagram, everyone's driving a Lamborghini, everyone's traveling to Maldives. Like, for yourself, what have you seen change in the way that we do business today through social media?
Social media has changed in that it used to be about volume. It used to be about quantity. Now it's about quality. And so for so many business owners or content creators, you'll hear them say that they're doing a lot more, but achieving and growing a lot less. And so the business owners and the entrepreneurs that are turning that into a win in this environment are the business owners that are thinking, okay, I don't necessarily need an audience of 100,000 people. I just need an audience of 1,000 to 5,000 good quality followers that are actually in my marketplace. And then I need to have a strategy or a funnel behind my social media that translates them from being fans into customers, from curious to committed. And so it's less about, and this has always been true, it's just become more true and more obvious. It's less about the vanity metrics now and more about how can you actually utilize social media to move people through a funnel to help the best fits become a customer or a client.
And let's talk tactical. When you talk about social media, like what's the way that you would help someone scale their brand, their business through social media? There's a lot of different strategies, brother. Let's talk about Instagram. Let's talk about Facebook. Let's talk about like building an audience, like monetizing an audience. Like most people, they can't go viral with a brand. What does that look like to grow your audience? Because your audience has grown quite significantly, Jack, in the last few years.
Yes. So the key, let's talk about Instagram, because Instagram is usually the main platform that people are interested in. There's a few keys with Instagram and social media more broadly. The first one is that perhaps the most important thing on social media is that you post consistently.
Yeah.
There's something in the Instagram algorithm that when you start posting consistently, and best practice on Instagram is twice a day. I encourage people to do a reel a day and a static post a day. That's not a requirement, by the way, because it sounds easy when you say it, but it's actually quite difficult to maintain that volume at a high level of quality. And so let's just say up to twice a day. And so do as much as you can with whatever resources and time that you have right now. And that might be twice a week, and then it might be 3 times a week, and then it might be 5 times a week. And so try to get up to posting twice a day. When you post more consistently, after about 3 to 6 months, the algorithm goes, okay, this person's serious. We're going to start pushing more people towards them. And so there's a lag period between somebody taking social media more seriously and seeing their follower growth increase. The second key component on social media these days is you need to stop selling and start being.
Yeah.
And so if you think about like traditional media and even like traditional celebrities and movies and soap operas and all that kind of stuff, think about all of that as the exact opposite to what you should be doing. What works on social media is authenticity. And I don't mean bullshit manufactured authenticity. I mean, actually give us an insight into who the fuck you are and your life, right? And so stop selling, start being points to don't try to portray yourself as a celebrity. Don't try to portray yourself as somebody that's bigger than you are. Talk to us and be transparent about the challenges that you're going through. Let us into the everyday moments. Let us into the struggles. Also, let us into the highs. Share with us what are your success habits and rituals. How do you overcome burnout? How do you avoid burnout? How do you run a business? How do you go through your career? Whatever it is for the individual. And so stop selling, start being is about showing up more authentically. That also translates to production in many senses as well. If you're doing a podcast, setups like this are optimal, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a long form piece of content, so you want it done really well. On Instagram, whether it's organic or you're shooting stuff to go into a paid ad, the less produced it is, the better. And so you want poor lighting, you want poor audio. Sometimes you don't want to clean your desk before you start shooting a video. Yeah. You want the desk to be dirty. You want the imperfections. And so number one is consistency. Number two is authenticity. And then number three is help people resolve their struggles. And so think about whoever is in your market, what are they struggling with right now? And how can you deliver content that helps them resolve their struggles and achieve their goals?
So that's Instagram. What about YouTube, Jack? Because YouTube is like, I speak to a lot of my clients. YouTube is like one of the hardest things to crack, I've heard.
Yep.
So any strategies tactically on growing or scaling your YouTube following?
There's a formula to making YouTube work. And so YouTube comes down to people that are incredibly successful on YouTube place as much emphasis on the thumbnail as they do the video.
Yeah.
And so the kind of sequence of things you want to think through in order to optimize your YouTube strategies. Number one, the thumbnail that you go to market with. One of the things that YouTube enables you to do now is you can test 3 different thumbnails. It will tell you the winner, and then you can double down on that, test 3 more, pick the winner, double down on that. So the first is thumbnail. The second is you want to open your video. This is same with Instagram, by the way. You want to open your video with the hook. Why should I watch this video? What's the reward? What's the payoff for me watching this video? Then after that first 3 seconds, you want to demonstrate that you're going to deliver on it. And so what happens is, and people do this on Instagram as well, you know, if you don't want to start your video with a big, long introduction that sets the context. Like, you know, I was going through the supermarket last week and I didn't have my cat with me that day because my cat was in the vet. And, you know, you think there's all this contextual stuff that's kind of important, and it's not. It's like start the video with the most impactful hook that you can. That's 3 seconds. And then demonstrate to me as of second 4 or 5 that you're going to deliver on that hook. And so the reason the delivery component is important is because we live in an age of clickbait marketing. People are used to clicking on something and then it's like, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not what it professed or claimed to be. And so hook me in and then demonstrate with the content that you're able, like prove to me that you're able to deliver on the promise that was made in the hook. So it's
Amazing.
Thumbnail, hook, deliver.
I really want to touch base on this, Jack. I went to your event a long time ago and you talked about, correct me if I'm wrong, the success formula, like the engine. There's this incredible 3-piece formula you mentioned at the event I went to.
Yep.
Mate, run us everyone through that one, because I think that's a really powerful way to drive a business.
There's really 3 core things that you need to piece together in order to have a scalable and wildly profitable business. The people we attract at the Entourage are the people who are very good at what they do, whether that's, you know, they've got 4 physio chains, or they might be a consulting business, or they might be a retailer, or it might be an e-com business. They're very good at what they do, but they want help in how do I turn this into a more scalable business model. There's really 3 things that any business needs in order to become more scalable. The first is we need to be able to attract high quality prospects consistently. And so do we have a marketing engine that's building audience, generating leads and nurturing those leads to get them closer to buying? The second thing that you need if you want to build a scalable business is the ability to convert. So a sales engine. You need a sales process that moves people through a high converting process. You need a strong offer that increases perceived value, and then you need to be priced correctly, meaning most business owners underprice what we do.
Yeah.
And we do that because you've got a sense of imposter syndrome and you know that everything that's wrong with your business. And so you tend to undervalue yourself, and that manifests in your prices being too low. And so what we want to do in the sales function, the convert function is significantly increase sales conversions, reduce time to sale. So how long does it take us to turn a lead into a sale? And significantly increase average dollar per sale, meaning how much people spend with us. And then the third component in that triangle that you're mentioning, Adam, is deliver, which is delivering on the fundamental promise. One of the core metrics that exists in businesses is lifetime value, meaning if there's two ways to grow a business. You can get more customers, or you can have your existing customers spend more with you. Most people forget that second one, and that's lifetime value. And so what you want to do in your delivery engine is you want to onboard people in a way that inducts them into your ecosystem and into your philosophy, delivers on the fundamental promise, and then your happiest and most successful customers and clients, you want to capture their testimonials, capture their success stories, and turn them into case studies that you can then integrate through your marketing, through your sales, and even through your delivery to your other clients and to your other customers. Delivery is where most business owners spend most of their time. And as we discussed before, if you spend most of your time in delivery, you don't have a business, you have a job.
Yeah.
And so we need to not only work out how to deliver on our promise, but how to deliver on your promise at scale and in a way that doesn't involve you at an operational level. And so if you can build all of those three different aspects, attracting high quality prospects, converting them into customers, and delivering at scale really well in a way that doesn't operationally involve you, then you'll have more money than you know what to do with.
Yeah. Matt, as we wrap up, I guess my last question for yourself is like, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs that are, struggling to scale? They're too trapped in their business. Like, what advice would you give to these people to help them go through that?
Well, the main thing that business owners get wrong is we try to do everything at once. And when we try to do everything at once, we do nothing well. And so the best question you can ask yourself is, what is the biggest challenge in this business right now that if solved would make the biggest impact? Is that your sales conversions are too low? Is that sales conversions are great, but lead gen is non-existent or too low? Or is it just that you're stuck in the day-to-day product or service delivery? Work out what is the biggest challenge that's currently constraining the growth of the business, and then do nothing else other than solve that challenge. Whether it takes you 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, doesn't matter. Get maniacal about solving that one challenge. And then once you've unlocked that constraint, ask yourself the next question, which is the same question. What's the number one challenge in this business right now that if solved would make the biggest difference? And then get busy solving that. And so the answer is often to do less in terms of breadth, have less surface area in the tasks and the projects that you try to take on, and a lot more depth to do the fundamentals incredibly well at scale. Great companies are great, not because they do anything fancy, but because they do the basics well at scale. And so much of the time it's about having the discipline to ask yourself, what's the number one constraint? And then the discipline to stay focused and execute against it.
Man, I appreciate your time. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Adam.